It's July 4th, 2025 in Kelowna, BC. James Plover has just been convicted of choking someone and uttering threats. These are violent crimes. As has become typical in Canada, both his defense lawyer and the prosecutor took no issue with delaying his sentencing for 10 weeks. So he was released.
And for the Tragedies Castle Resort at this time.
You psycho!
3 hours later, the police were called to a parking lot just down the road. James had just savagely murdered his ex-wife, Bailey McCourt, with a hammer. Bailey had done everything right. She had reported the abuse, she went to court, and she trusted the system. Plover had already been convicted of assaulting her. There was no discussion of the risk that he posed out of custody. He was released on bail anyway, and now Bailey is dead. It's April 26, 2024 in Surrey, BC. After 2 robbery charges and on probation from other convictions for possessing a weapon, Adam Mann is released on bail despite the prosecutor's objections. 2 months later, Tori Dunn was falling asleep on her couch when Adam Mann broke in and murdered her. They don't know each other. It was completely random. She had done nothing wrong.
Adam Troy Mann is charged with second-degree murder in the June 16th slaying of 30-year-old Tori Dunn in her Surrey home.
Adam Mann had a crazy long violent criminal history too, including a 2003 stabbing and a 2009 robbery with a weapon for which he was given a 12-year sentence. Either way, Tori Dunn is dead because this guy wasn't kept in jail. Randall McKenzie was out on bail when he killed OPP Constable Priscilla. Brianna Broadfoot, who was murdered after being stabbed multiple times by Jesse Bleck, who was out on bail for prior assault charges. This goes on and on and on. In 2022, there were 256 people charged with homicide while on some kind of release, including house arrest and parole. And that's a horrifying statistic. That's 30% of all homicides for the year. That might as well be one a day. The Canada that you grew up in doesn't exist anymore. People facing consequences for their actions, that's just not a thing. Violent crime has continued its upward trend, surging by 50% since 2015. Let that sink in. Digging deeper into bail-related stats, we see a disturbing reality. It's repeat offenders out on bail whom are disproportionately involved in serious violent incidents. Stabbings, shootings, assaults. But hold on, let's go back. This didn't happen in a vacuum.
The young member for Ottawa South.
Pleased to stand this evening to speak to Bill C-75. Bill C-75 includes amendments that will streamline and modernize the bail process while maintaining public confidence in the criminal justice system.
Back in 2019, the federal government passed C-75, a big old revamp of our criminal justice system. And the goal was to speed things up, reduce backlogs, and make bail fairer.
The bill will expand bail conditions that police are able to impose on an accused, which will enable their release at an earlier stage. These conditions, however, will be guided by a principle of restraint for police and prosecutors.
Enter the principle of least restraint. It's straight from the criminal code now. When someone is arrested, the default is to release them quickly with the lightest conditions possible. No big bail bonds or house arrest until the prosecutor proves that they're a flight risk, a repeat offender threat, or likely to tamper with evidence. That flight risk thing, we'll come back to that.
A principle of restraint means that release at the earliest opportunity will be favored over detention, and that only reasonable and necessary bail conditions are to be imposed on an accused.
Detention, being kept in jail, should be the last resort. Bill C-75 codified that. Plus, it told judges to consider people's backgrounds to avoid over-jailing them. We'll come back to that one too in a second. This prioritizes releases over safety, especially for violent crimes. And with repeat offenders, it's like giving a kid a timeout for breaking a vase and then handing them another one. So let's look at the cold, hard facts. In 2024, police reported around 530,000 violent crimes across the country. That's assaults, robberies, sexual assaults, and more. That's roughly 1,600 violent crimes every single day. Yeah, you heard that right. While you're sipping your morning coffee, over 1,000 people are dealing with violence somewhere in Canada. Homicides hit 788 last year. That's 2 a day. A huge chunk of these happen while the perps are out on bail or parole. Stats show that violent crimes committed on bail spiked in places like Ontario, assaults making up half the jump. In 2022 alone, the 256 murders were linked to criminals out on release. And get this, from one report, 587 violent offenders were caught committing crimes while on bail. 464 of them serious ones involving guns. When it feels like it's happening every day, that's because it is. These aren't just numbers. These are people's lives. These are entire communities terrified.
Someone! Get the fucking phone right now, then! Get the fucking phone! Fuck, man, get the fucking phone right now!
The problem, I think, is that so often we get lost in these stats. You see a pie chart or a graph going up dramatically, and we forget that those are personal stories, real people. Take Randall McKenzie in December of 2022. This was the guy that was out on bail despite a rap sheet including assault and having illegal guns. He cut off his ankle monitor, stole cars, ambushed the OPP constable, killing him near Brantford, Ontario. Or Mohammed Majidpour in Vancouver in 2022. 24 convictions, out on bail, attacks a young woman with a pole yelling slurs, sets a car on fire, released again. Twice more arrested that month.
Majidpour was arrested Saturday and released from jail Sunday. At around 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon, the same officers who arrested him Saturday spotted Majidpour near Main and Hastings. They followed him to a store in the downtown core where they say Majidpour stole $330 worth of leggings. He was rearrested just 2 hours, 18 minutes after his release.
Then there's Miles Sanderson, 59 convictions, violated parole. In 2022 goes on a stabbing rampage in Saskatchewan, killing 11 at James Smith Cree Nation. And Sarah Bradshaw, 18, out on bail, steals a Porsche and runs over the owner. Bailed out the next day for another theft. So let's come back to C-75, the detention being the last option thing. If they had not passed C-75, these guys would have very likely been held in detention and refused release. It's actually pretty rare to have such a direct cause and effect for criminal justice reform. Like, it's usually a kind of gray area, but this is a direct consequence of that bill. The legislation is black and white. Release them. That's all it says. And I've spoken to Crown prosecutors and cops and JPs about this. They're frustrated too, because these cases scream system failure.
You look at the court system that's responsible for dealing with it and ensuring there is a deterrent, it is not there. You cannot let these predators out there in society either institutionalize them or lock them up. You're going to have to incapacitate these people for a period of time. That's a sad state we're in right now, but it's a true state, and that's the only way we are going to be able to protect society at this point.
Bail's meant to balance rights and safety, but when violent repeaters walk free, who's really being protected? I don't want to just talk about the criminals. They should rot under the jail for all I care. The victims are the main focus. I've looked at so many cases for this doc, and it's absolutely horrifying. Each one of them is an injustice. Just recently, a father of 4 was murdered, shot dead during a home invasion. He was just protecting his kids. These stories go on and on and on. But here's another thing I want to come back to. We have a serious problem with non-citizens gaming this system. We've seen parts of Bill C-75 being used recently to justify lighter sentencing or punishing for people seeking citizenship in this country. Immigration status being used as a factor during sentencing. One example, a permanent resident was given a conditional sentence after trying to purchase sexual services from a 15-year-old. He was given a conditional sentence, basically a slap on the wrist, because a stronger sentence would have stopped him from getting citizenship. Let that sink in. Another non-citizen was convicted twice for groping an 18-year-old's genitals at a bar. He received a discharge. That's him walking free to avoid a criminal record which would prevent him from appealing his deportation order. This is insane. What about the kid? What about the 18-year-old? Where is the focus on the victims? Right now, people who aren't citizens get bail and get to keep their passports, and then poof, they're gone. Look at Arjun Sanan, 19, arrested in December 2023 for 3 drive-by shootings tied to extortions in Edmonton, Sherwood Park, and Winnipeg. Released on bail, he hops a pre-booked flight to India. Gone.
Sanana is allegedly to have booked a flight to India, committed the Winnipeg and Sherwood Park shootings, and then fled the country. As far as we know, he is now in India.
How about Raj Kumar Memi, convicted of smuggling 80 kilos of coke, sentenced to 15 years, but flees to India after release pending proceedings. Canada-wide warrant, Interpol involved, but he's gone. Everything I'm talking about is common sense. It's common sense to protect borders like we protect victims. It's amazing to me how these liberals respond to this stuff, in so much as that they don't. They don't see it as a problem, and if you don't see it as a problem, you're never going to solve this.
The actual crimes and the actual issues around bail are quite sound, and they're embedded in codified in law right now.
And I know that a lot of the country is talking about bail reforms as the end-all fix-all, but ultimately, laws and writing laws do not just fix a problem with the flip of a switch.
Remember Sean Fraser? He is the failed housing minister and failed immigration minister. Well, now he's the justice minister, and just last week he tweeted something so ridiculous. Since last week, we've had case after case after case. Since this tweet, he told us that this isn't the Wild West, but it sure feels like it. The public safety minister, same thing. He doesn't think there's a problem. So if these guys don't think there's a problem, how are we ever going to take this seriously for every single Canadian that's terrified right now? So what's the fix? Well, we've got one. My colleague Arpan is introducing bail reform legislation that will end the catch and release for good. We're going to start with repealing the principle of least restraint from Bill C-75 that I talked about. We will refocus the justice system on victims and keep the violent people in prison where they belong. We're also going to stop the tag team bail process that's become so common today. Right now, believe it or not, a criminal can go in and vouch for their criminal buddy so that they can get bail. If you've been convicted of an indictable offense in the last 10 years, you cannot vouch for somebody like that. Oh yeah, and if you're not a citizen, we're taking your passport before you're given bail. No more of these flights out of the country, no more fleeing justice. So much of this is common sense. Jail, not bail, for repeat violent offenders. Over the last 10 years, the Liberals tried this woke, naive, hippie nonsense. Like, we don't need laws, just let people loose. Crime stats went up in a perfect V because of that decision. We owe it to the victims who have paid for all of that stupidity and blood and stopped this garbage. We owe it to everyone who's afraid today. I hate making videos like this, and doing the research for this is gut-wrenching. 1,600 violent crimes a day. Somewhere in Canada, while you've been watching this, someone has been a victim of violent crime. And far too often, they're already out on bail when they committed that crime. This needs to stop. This is one of those times where I will thank the Liberals for their climb down on their weak justice policy over the last 10 years. We owe it to victims, and we owe it to every single Canadian that has changed their lives or has been a victim of crime. We owe it to them right now.